Today we're being joined by the coach of the Port Melbourne VFLW Football Club, Thomas Chitsos. Thomas, thanks for coming on.
No worries, mate. How are you?
Not bad, thanks, you.
Good, going well. Appreciate the invite, and definitely came along quickly. So I appreciate the message, and looking forward to chatting.
No worries, absolutely. Now, Thomas, how did the coaching journey start off for you? Did you ever play footy beforehand and got into coaching? How did the coaching journey start for you?
Yeah, definitely played footy. So been just at my local club my entire life, really. So Taylor's Lake, so
Yep.
in the western suburbs, in the Essendon
Mhm.
District Football League. Played all the way through juniors up until senior footy. But coming out of school, always knew that I wanted to be within the sporting environment, specifically footy.
Yep.
Went through a bachelor's of sports coaching and development at La Trobe University, which was really good. So started that in 2019 and
Yep.
completed it at the end of 21, but it got pushed back a little bit through COVID.
Oh, yeah.
During that time, started coaching at Taylor's Lakes, just doing some junior stuff there with the under 14 and under 12 boys.
Mhm.
And then off the back of that, got the opportunity to go to the Coburg Footy Club in 2022 under the current Williamstown VFL head coach, Liam Kavanagh, as his assistant.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Worked at Coburg with him in 22, and ultimately once he got the Willie gig the following season, I took over from him, and that was my first ever senior coaching role, looking after the
Mhm.
Coburg women's side in the VAFA, which was a fantastic experience.
Mhm.
Obviously, the VAFA is one of the most strong competitions throughout the state and the country, so that kind
Mhm.
of introduced me to the early elements of, I guess, VFL footy, as there's a lot of VFLW girls that play locally in the VAFA. So um, that was awesome. And then, in 24, got the opportunity to join Port Melbourne, thanks to Sean Bunkle, off the back of the girls' flag in 23. And with Sean stepping aside at the end of this past season, another window opened up, and just feel very lucky and privileged to be coaching the Port Melbourne Footy Club with their VFLW side.
Sure. Obviously, the club's obviously had some changes. You said that Sean stepped aside and you came in. How have you enjoyed the journey so far? I know obviously we're only 7 rounds in, but how's the time since you were officially in charge, and how's that been?
Yeah, it's a roller coaster of emotions as a footy season is. Obviously, VFLW competition so incredibly tight.
Mm.
Any given day or any given week, every game's a battle. So, pre-season's obviously long this year with the competition starting up in April instead of March. We had obviously an extra month to bank away of work, so kind
Yeah.
of felt like it came on probably a bit later than it did in 24, but
Mm.
probably gave us the time we needed to kind of settle down. Obviously, we've got new players to embed into the squad. We've got relatively new coaching staff as well. So gave
Mm.
us the time we needed, and really enjoying the season now. But also going to be enjoying this mid-season bye over King's birthday weekend.
For sure. I was going to ask you about that because and I'm also mentioning that since you brought it up there, the mid-season buy. Obviously, it's always a topic that always gets heavily debated in any format, whether it's VFLW, AFLW, AFL, how the structures of buys work. Are you happy with how this setup is? Because I believe there's another one before the last round, between round 13, 14. Is that the right setup, or would you go about tweaking it? Would you just have this one that's this week? Would you have none? How would you go about it in an ideal world?
I definitely believe that they're necessary in some capacity. So last year there was no buy at all. It was 14 straight rounds straight into finals, and I think both, not just for staff clearly, but players as well, they need time to rest and recover to put the best performance possible on the field. So whether it's one, whether it's two, doesn't really phase me. We'll just take it as it is. I'm sure every other club will as well. But the buy before round 14 will also kind of be a nice little freshen up for those sides that are going to be, playing for something on the last round, and then for those 6 that get to qualify for finals as well. So definitely we'll make the most of them. But if there were none, we'd make do. But if there were 2, we'll make the most of them as well.
That's fair enough. And then you mentioned about when you got officially announced in September, I think it was last year, to be the coach of the club. When you first got told, you mentioned that Sean stepped aside. How was that initial call? Was there any build up to it? Was it just a straight phone call saying, "Would you like to be the coach?" And it's a simple answer back. How did that all go, and how did you react to the news?
It definitely wasn't that straightforward. So Sean obviously let us know that he was going to be stepping aside after obviously 3 very successful seasons in charge of the footy club, and was just lucky enough that the club went through a process, and they were more than happy for me to, I guess, put my name forward, go through the normal interview process, and lucky enough to get it. So obviously felt last year my role was head of development, which
Yep.
I absolutely loved. It gave me a chance to, I guess, really build relationships across the entire program, and I wasn't exclusive, I guess, to a particular line. I was kind of across the entire team, working underneath Sean in whatever space he needed. So yeah, I definitely felt like I had some really good connections with the group, and it was something that I would have loved the opportunities to do, and obviously was lucky enough to get. But that being said, it's something, as I said earlier, I'm really humbled by it, and I'm really self-aware that I've still got a lot of learning to do within that. And I'm just kind of taking it week on week. I've got a fantastic coaching staff who support me, and also the girls themselves are just unbelievable. So I'm really lucky to be in this position.
For sure, definitely. Obviously doing well. In terms of a recruiting side, Thomas, obviously, as every club in any league, obviously this changes every year, and obviously you're new to the club as well. So, how do you go about trying to recruit players and retain some players that you got at the club, and what are some key selling points? Because obviously, being a standalone club as well, obviously some people would kind of gravitate to, if they've been let go at AFLW level, they go, oh well, I'm going to go to a AFLW or Line One. So what kind of pull do you pull to try and recruit people? Obviously, Port Melbourne's a very strong side. They played finals last year, but like, what do you kind of try and sell to someone that you're trying to bring in or even retain?
Yeah, absolutely. So our footy manager, John Bonanno, me and him obviously work very close together. He's got previous experience in the coach pathways and has been at the club now for 2 or 3 years as well. So me and him in the off season worked really closely together in the recruiting side of things, in the list management side of things. And in terms of, I guess, selling a message, one thing that I obviously wanted to make clear to our girls that we wanted to retain from the 24 side was, I guess, outlining my vision for the program, but also for them individually. So really making it clear where we see them playing their best footy in the side, how we're going to go about doing that, and also from a team perspective, what's most important to us. And the two things we've really honed in from an off-field perspective were, I guess, our team values and I guess what our purpose is as a program and as a group, what we want to be doing every time we're together, whether it's a club function, whether it's a training night, whether it's a game day. That was what we really had a big focus on off field. But then from an on field perspective, really consistent terminology across the board was a big one for me. So it doesn't have to be long and detailed and like they're in a classroom, but it just needs to be really simple and making sure that everybody's on the same page. So to our girls that we were trying to retain, that's exactly what we preached. And to be honest, it doesn't really change either for the girls that we tried to recruit externally as well. We don't want to obviously, kind of bucket players into you've been a Port Melbourne player before or you're a new player. Ultimately, they're all wearing the same jumper this season. And it was obviously a fresh start with myself, and we've got a new high performance manager in Laura Bashford, who's been around the VFLW scene for a long time as well. So I guess kind of the two pillars in the S&C space and in the footy space were new. So we need to keep it as simple as possible, while also understanding the girls are definitely intelligent enough to build layers to our game, and that's what we're working on as the season progresses.
That's right. It's good to do that. Obviously in this season, currently fifth, obviously being a top 6 in the ladder. Obviously, it's, as you mentioned before, a really, really tight spot at the moment. Obviously, 4 wins, 2 losses, and a draw. How have you assessed the season so far, Thomas? Obviously, it's been a lot of good games throughout this year and some good wins as well.
Yeah, it's the competition is a bit of a crazy one. So look, relatively happy with where we're sitting, but of course, I'm sure every coach would be always wanting a little bit more and kind of eager to get back to it once the bye ends. But yeah, for us, I think at the mid-season point, we've played every other side in the top 6 at the moment. We've already had to play, so we've had a pretty front-ended draw, which is great for us to give us a test as to where we're at currently. Clearly, we obviously just played North on the weekend in the reigning premiers, and they're a top health side, coached by Brett, who's a tremendous coach, obviously premiership coach. And we're lucky enough that we get to actually play them in the back end of the year too. So content with where we're sitting, but definitely a lot of learnings that we've taken from it so far, and really looking forward how we can continue to build once we get back. But it's kind of a mix at the moment, because you'd like to obviously go back and change a few things from the results we didn't quite get, but also that being said, we've had some pretty positive performances too. So
For, s- for sure. Obviously, there was the game that comes to mind is that with the Geelong and Darabin wins. Also, they've started to struggle. Remember, then Darabin's now won the last four, so it makes that win, looking more impressive. Obviously, your arch rivals, Williamstown, are obviously a side that are always up there in finals contentious like yourselves, and obviously Essendon, they're one of the informed sides this year. They're probably, to me personally, covering the competition. A bit of a surprise packet, I feel, compared to some of the other sides at the top, and they're, I think, at the top or very close to it now.
Yeah, the Bombers in round one were really, really strong against us. To be honest, we came away from that game really feeling like we were the second best side on the day. So I guess that's always a positive thing. If you don't play your best footy and you're still able to come away with 4 points, it's definitely a plus. But no, the Bombers have been fantastic, and yeah, I'm sure they'll continue to persist in the second half of the year and push for one of those final spots. Yeah, the Darabin game, as you mentioned, and the Geelong game, obviously our two biggest wins margin-wise.
Yeah.
Geelong, though, incredibly young, and there were a lot of issues that they did give us, especially in that second half. Their pace on the outside of quite a wet day. So, yeah, they were a very unique challenge. And, yeah, you're right, Darabin, since we played them, they've won 4 on the run. So, the competition it's so even, and week to week, as I said, any team can beat any opponent, which is what makes the comp so great. So, yeah, we're very much just focused on the doggies once we come out of the bye next week, and that'll be a great challenge for us.
For sure. It's great that you mentioned the Bulldogs. Now, obviously, they're a side. Obviously, they played in the grand final last year with North Melbourne, but I feel like this year they're kind of hard to get a judgment for one reason. And it's because they've played their AFLW players or some AFLW players every round, bar the round the one they lost most recently to Box Hill when they had a good lead and lost it. So, how do you go about trying to study them and try and plan the week ahead? Like, how do you try and find out, are they going to play these players? Are they not going to play these players? How do you try and work through that week when sometimes it's unknown what side's going to come out?
Yeah, it's one that you obviously can't really predict all the time, and it's one of the great, I guess, quirks of the competition that we have, the AFL influx that teams can drop in on any given week. Obviously, last year we had the Richmond affiliation, as we did in years past, and yeah, I mean, it comes in swings and roundabouts, right? You get the luck of the draw with the fixture. If you come up against a side when they have a heavy influx of AFL players, it's something you got to deal with, and vice versa. If they have none, then it's just what you have to face. So, in terms of preparation, we'll look at obviously that game against Box Hill, where they didn't have any players in, or very minimal if they did, and we'll also look at the games where they have had them and prepare for both scenarios. Ultimately, as I said, it is a luck of the draw thing, and whichever doggy side comes up, we're going to have to obviously respect them, take them head on, and challenge them any way we can. But yeah, it is just one of the quirks of the competition, the AFL influx of players.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that too. Obviously, how do you go into facing some of these sides that do have these AFLW players in it, and especially in the early part of the season? Do you take it more of a challenge and a good thing? Because if you beat a side that has those players in, it's even better of a confidence. Obviously, beating any side's great, but if they got an influx of AFLW players and you win, just makes the win more impressive and a confident boost for some of the players individually. Go, we've just beat a team full of AFLW players, or some AFLW players, and individually might have won the battle as well.
Absolutely, and yeah, going back to that Bombers game in round one, I think the Dons had 4 or 5 AFL players in, which was really challenging to deal with. And as I said, they probably outplayed us on the day. But yeah, you're spot on with I guess the mental approach or reflection that your players and yourself as a team can come out of a game like that with. If you do get the 4 points, it's obviously a huge confidence boost. But even if you don't, if you're able to stick to your process and still be really happy with, I guess, the intent and the attitude from us as a group against AFL players, there's still many positives you can take from it, whether you do win, whether you lose. Clearly, we'd love to win, irrespective of who we're playing against. But yeah, it's a great challenge. And look, there's obviously a lot of our girls with aspirations to crack into the AFL one day. So for the chance for them to test themselves against players currently in the system, they thrive on it. And yeah, if it's something that we have to continue to face, whether it's against the doggies or another side later in the year, it's something that our girls relish. So yeah, week to week, we just see what it is.
Sure. And then obviously not too long ago, you obviously had that draw with Sandy where it had come from behind. I think it was 13 down at three-quarter time, I think, if that's correct. And obviously got the draws in the end. How do you assess draws? How do you kind of feel out of it? Do you like how they're draws exist? I mean, it's always a hot topic of some people. Some people don't care. Some people don't want draws in any point in time, only in finals. So where are you with draws? Are you content with that? And how do you kind of like review it? Like, is it a win? Is it a loss? Is it depending on how, like the Essendon game, for example, is this you treat it something like that as well?
Yeah, we had a kind of a different approach to review with that game, and yeah, draws are clearly a unique feeling driving home. It's probably one that sits in your gut longer than any other normal loss because there's always the
Mm.
ifs, buts, and maybes of what could have happened. And the game was
Mm.
such a unique one. I think we completely controlled the first and fourth quarter, but obviously the middle two quarters, Sandy got a hold of us from a scoreboard point of view and were just
Yeah.
extremely effective with their entries. So I think for us, and this is what we spoke about in our review, we took definitely the more positive approach from it as we were a couple of goals down at three-quarter time. So we were the team having to kind of try and win the game or get ourselves back
Mm.
into it. So with the ability to do that against a very heavily contested Sandy side who are extremely good around the contest and
Mm.
love to clog it up with numbers, we were wrapped with how we were able to execute for most of that last quarter. But we ultimately sat down as a group and just watched the last 3 minutes of the game uncut and just learnt what we can do better in those situations, even put ourselves in Sandy's shoes. What did they do that was either positive or something they can work on and kind of apply it to ourselves? So if we are in that situation again, how we can
Mm.
get better. So, yeah, look, I think a few weeks prior to that, we played Williamstown and we were kind of the other way around. We were up by about
Mm.
a goal to 10 points at three-quarter time, and we were able to hold on really, really well. And this time we had
Yeah.
to do it the other way and didn't quite get the 4 points. But yeah, there was definitely some positives we can take out of it because with the comp being so close, I'm sure there'll be a couple more close games coming up around the corner.
Sure, absolutely. And another rule that I've mentioned on my positive feelings, I don't know how you feel, but sometimes for me, as a spectator, sometimes could be disappointed. And I'm sure as speaking to some players, they kind of feel a bit awkward with this as well. I mean, that's the time and the clock, not stopping on 20 minutes, even for injuries, unless it's a severe injury or something like that. And like with ball ups and the goals, the clock keeps going and it will stop basically on flat 20. How are you with that? And should that be something they should change where it doesn't invite the intentional part and eliminate the chances of wasting time and be yes, it's in the rule, but where they eliminate that so you can have a more of a fairer contest?
It's a good question. Look, definitely based off the way that the rules are orchestrated now, we obviously teach and coach late game execution for both sides as well, right? So if we are up by
Yeah,
a couple of points with a few minutes to go, we train exactly what we need to do to kill the clock and how we navigate
yeah,
that, and vice versa, how we get back into the game. Personally, for me, I'd like for there to be probably some, I guess, adjustments made to the rules, whether it's just in
yeah.
the last 5 minutes of the quarter, time on does exist, or even if it's only exclusively to the last quarter. I think you just invite more pure football instead of, I guess, some dark art
Mm.
tactics at times. So
Yes.
it is an interesting one, but either way, both teams are playing under the same rules and same stipulations
Mm.
based on whatever they are. So yeah, it's still exciting footy either way. But yeah, personally, I wouldn't mind there being some
Mm.
adjustments as we continue to progress, which I'm sure there will be. I think in time,
Mm.
whether it's in the VFLW or even the AFLW, we'll continue to,
Yeah.
as we get more games into the season, I think the dynamic of it will change, which will, obviously be more beneficial. But where it's at right now, it's still more than fine. And as I said,
Yeah.
we train for it in both situations.
Yeah, that's fair. No, that's a good point that you made and raised there about that. Even if it's just for the last quarter, because that's right, because that's obviously when it matters more, where they can't waste time. So I feel like there was a game a few rounds ago. It was Collingwood and Box Hill at Vic Park. Hawthorn had a shot. They lost by 2 points, I believe. They had a set shot from about 45 out. They missed it. And there was, I looked at the clock, so I flogged it for my channel, and it was about 45 seconds to go. And the ball wasn't kicked back out till like maybe 18 seconds to go. So I feel like that 27 seconds or so, like, that's obviously very valuable. And the ball only went to about 40 meters out. So you add that 27 seconds in, anything can happen. Doesn't mean it guarantees anything, but you have that choice there and ability there.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, look, at the end of the day, Collingwood executed that perfectly in that game, right? They
Yeah.
did exactly what they needed to do to hold on. And that's why they're such an experienced side. So I think, yeah, both teams, and look, just as we know, the
Mm.
quality and skill level, not only from purely from a footballing standpoint, but from a footy IQ standpoint, is just continuing to grow year on year. And the
Mm.
girls at this level are tremendous in understanding and having that situational awareness. So if there's a loophole to take, I'm pretty comfortable in saying all sides in the
Yeah.
comp will to
Yeah.
do whatever they can. So yeah, I guess you've got to do your work in the first 3.5 quarters to make sure you're not at risk of falling into the bad side of that situation. So it just is what it is.
Yeah, sure. And then another thing that I've always noticed is with the fixturing, the time slots in terms of the days. Do you feel like they should be spread out a little bit more? Because obviously, there's a lot of games always shoved in the Saturdays. There's sometimes all 6 games are almost within overlapping each other at some point, if not all the part of the games. Do you feel like, from a coach's point of view, to try and do oppo analysis, or like even just watch it in general, do you feel like they should be spread it out a little bit more across the day? I know there's sometimes VFL double headers, but there is a lot of the time where there's games where there's nothing else at that same venue, so they obviously can start it a bit later. Is there something like that you feel like they should tweak a little bit more as well? Obviously, there's some rounds that is a bit better, but some rounds it's just clumped together.
Yeah, look, I think it is quite a club by club situation. So as you mentioned there, the double header thing for us at Port is extremely important, and we love having double headers with our men's side. I think most of our home games this year will be double headers, and we've already had quite a few, and it just creates a really good atmosphere. You know, there's crowds coming and going for either match, so you kind of get a mixture of both, and it just builds that atmosphere. Yeah, look, clearly there'd be times, and there will be times through the year where in an oppo analysis sense, we'd like a little bit more time, but that's just the way the cards fall at times. You know, you're going to get a week where you get a 9-day break compared to a week where you get a 6-day break. So just as your players are going to have to recover quicker, you as coaches are going to have to recover quicker. So to me, it's it's not really a big issue. I think it swings in roundabouts, and ultimately you get your favourable weeks, and then you get somewhere you've got to be a little bit more on edge. But now from my end, I think it's all part of it.
For sure. Now, who would you say some of the players of the club that have kind of impressed you this year? They kind of are flying under the radar, that may not be publicly getting talked about too much at Port Melbourne, that are having pretty consistent seasons, or some of them may have just surprised you in general?
Yeah. There's been a lot, to be honest. I think at this stage, so at the halfway mark, we've already had 31 players play across our first 7 weeks. A mixture between obviously injuries, unavailability, but also just girls who we probably didn't expect to push this hard this early for a spot have really cracked their way in. On the weekend, we had Hannah Foran, the younger sister of Georgia, make her debut against North and play in the ruck, and she was tremendous. Hasn't played at the level before, and just took it by storm against obviously Reynolds from North, who's a well-established ruck in the competition. And she was just instrumental across the ground, not just with her ruck craft, but getting involved. I think laid 12 tackles. So she's someone that we're really excited about as a young player. I guess from our returning players, I think Bella Stutt and Lily Hart on the wings have had tremendous seasons. Bella Stutt obviously been around the club for quite a few years now. Lily this year has just been moved into the leadership group as an emerging leader, as one of our young players, and wrapped with the work that they're doing. I could go for days, mate, about some of our girls and what they've done. Another one I'd probably give a shout out to is Charlie Anderson, in terms of we've gotten her across from the Southern Saints. That's where she previously played a VFL footy, and she'd just been playing locally at Caulfield in the VAFA, and she's played every game this year down back, and just continued to develop in a tremendous way, really, with her compete, her intensity, her the intangibles, those 1%er type things. She's just crucial for us in bringing that energy and kind of becoming a cult figure pretty quickly. So they'd be a few, and then of course you've got the names that most of the competition would know doing their thing week in, week out. But I think just the talent across the competition is so great now. You know, there's so many players from each club that you have to worry about as a coach going in when you're doing your oppo analysis, and you're thinking, geez, how are you going to stop all of them at once? So, they'd be some names from us so far that have really stood out.
For sure. There's a few other names I wanted to bring up too. Obviously, Georgia Booth is someone who's obviously very good at football, but also very talented at basketball, and obviously managing the both throughout the same season, playing in the WNBL and playing in the other basketball leagues at the moment while playing footy and travelling to Bendigo back and forth. How good of a leader is she in the side to play footy, but also dual sport and very talented? It must be very impressive to see her balance both, because for some it's something that you can't do, and she manages to do it.
Yeah, Boothie's incredible in terms of being an athlete. She's clearly top of the range. So she's still quite raw to football in terms of, I think overall she's still probably played only under 30 games in terms of local and VFL put together. So we obviously we haven't been able to have her 2 of the last 3 weeks due to her basketball commitments, and we would have loved to have had her on the weekend against North. But
Yeah.
you can just see the application in terms of someone that wants to learn. I've probably never coached someone who's so invested in wanting to seek out coaches for more information, and that goes for her basketball too.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's just got incredible raw athleticism. We're playing her so far this year as a forward, which we didn't do too much of last year. She's also pinch hitting in the ruck at times when we need a bit of relief in there. And yeah, she doesn't fear anything, but that kind of footy IQ stuff is starting to come along as well to really complement her athletic traits. But it's all down to her commitment and her hard work. And as I said, how she seeks out information any chance she gets. So as a leader, even with, I guess, the limited football experience to other players, she leads by example all the time. You know, even when she knows she's kind of hampered due to her basketball commitment, she's always present. She's always there. And yeah, we're very lucky to have her. So yeah, hopefully there's not too many more basketball clashes, but yeah, she's a fantastic asset for us to have.
Sure. And someone up forward who I think has done really well for the girls this year is Caitlin O'Keefe, obviously up there in the goal kicking race at the moment. I was pretty impressed with her season, especially in the start of it. Been pretty consistent.
Yeah, Noodle we call her. Noodle's her nickname. She's just one of the most natural footballers you'll ever come across. Clearly, for years now, was instrumental in the 23 Premiership side, more so playing as a midfielder. But yeah, over the last year and a half, we've really tried to embed her in our forward half of the ground. You know, just a lovely set shot for goal. Her body craft and her positioning in one-on-one situations is just top of the range. So, yeah, obviously, we know Nike's a tough one to catch from a goal kicking standpoint at North. And yeah, she did get a couple on the weekend. But yeah, Noodle for us is just so important. And she's continuing to really develop in a strong way from a leadership standpoint. I think for her, that's probably been her biggest growth this season. As a footballer, she's, as I said, for years just been super consistent, but she's really becoming more vocal, trying to drive standards amongst the group. So very proud of her for the work that she's put in. And yeah, looking forward in the second half of the season, how she can really carry that on, because she's going to be hugely important for us in getting to where we want to get to.
Sure. Obviously, Lauren Caruso, obviously, someone I believe got injured recently, and obviously he's a key part in your side and through the midfield. Is there an expected time on her? Expected to be back at some point this year, and what kind of impact does she have off field when she's not playing? Obviously, on field is terrific.
Yeah, Loz is, as you say, terrific. Just her ability to play anywhere on the ground, really. So clearly in the 23 season, again, she was dominant across half back, and more so over the last 12 months, we've pushed her more as a permanent on-baller. And yeah, she had a fantastic start to the season. I think she was critical in the win we had against Williamstown in round 4. She was, yeah, fantastic. And then in the Geelong game as well, where she did obviously cop a knock, was yeah, probably the best couple of players on the ground as well. So yeah, we won't have her for the next little period. Yeah, she's kind of just going through all the processes now to work through her rehab with her injury. But yeah, we're hoping to see her back as soon as we can. But from an off-field standpoint, while she's not able to be on the track, yeah, she's now in a position where she's super keen to learn more and develop more as a leader, not for her off-field stuff specifically. Yes, that's part of it, but more so once she does get back on the park, to really kind of have gathered a different lens through these weeks that she won't be there, and kind of figure out how she can more so help her teammates moving forward. And she's you know, come to me and come to all the coaches wanting to kind of really invest in that. And, you know, she was running our midfield review on Monday after the North game. So she's really wanting to be hands-on with it all. And, yeah, just kind of put herself in a position for when she does come back to be even a better footballer than she already was, which is a hard thing to do with how talented she is. But, yeah, she's super keen to help in any way she can.
For sure. A few other names I wanted to bring up: Eloise Ashley Cooper and Molly Maloney, who obviously two names maybe not familiar to some people in the public eyes, but I feel like this year, the both of them in particular have had pretty consistent years. And what do they provide to the side?
Yeah, Coops, one of our co-captains alongside Olivia Barton this year, and she's just, you know, probably one of the best leaders I've ever come across in any setting, whether we're talking sport, whether we're talking work. She's her ability to just, I guess, galvanize a group and always have the most composed mindset and tone of message and understanding what's required in the moment is just so valuable to us. She's basically an extension of us on the field, as is Liv, her co-captain, which we're very lucky to have the both of them. So she's had a couple of weeks off. She missed the Willie game and the Cats games in round 4 and 5. She was just managing a slight knock. But yeah, we've had her back for these last few weeks, and she's just so important to what we do. And then with Molly, we unfortunately lost her for a little bit after the Cats game as well, and she's hopefully just on the cusp of returning. But she's also in our leadership group this season, and she is the cult figure of the footy club. I'm sure all the girls would attest to that. Her energy is contagious, and she actually led the group out for captain as the first time in that Geelong game as Eloise and Liv were out. So she thrived off that, and she's itching to get back. So clearly as our primary ruck, we can't wait to have her back at our disposal. But as I said, it always opens up the opportunities for other girls. Like I mentioned, Hannah Fawn before, she stepped up in her place this week. And we're just so lucky to have so many talented leaders in our side, both by title in the leadership group, but also those that don't have a title. For example, Lisa Davies been tremendous. She's obviously been in the leadership group before, a very wise head for us down back. And she's just continued to do everything that she always does on the field, off the field, from a leadership standpoint. So, I'm pretty lucky as a coach to have the players that I do from a leadership standpoint.
For sure. And then you mentioned too before about players being like Lauren Caruso and Eloise Gibert for a few weeks. So you had unavailability through Georgia and some other players throughout the year. But how invaluable, though, is it, Thomas, to go through the list? You mentioned, I think it was 31 you said you've played through so far this year. Obviously, that can be a downside for some teams if they're struggling. But obviously, your side is obviously going very, very well at the moment still with all that happening. And what confidence can that give the side going into what's hopefully a final series, knowing you've got the confidence and you've got players like Hannah, you mentioned playing her first game and killing it in one game already, that you can have the confidence knowing if you have to call on some of these players that unfortunately miss out, you'd be pretty confident knowing that they've played a role before and they could do it again.
100%. I think for us, we obviously as staff and as coaches have confidence in all players across our list to come in and do a job if required. The development plans and processes that we have in place across the course of the pre-season, how we keep players integrated even when they are going through rehab, and or if they're not in the side, how we try and stay obviously in as much communication with them as possible when they're back at local, how we communicate with their local clubs. It's all super important, but we already have probably that founded belief and confidence, but it's probably the bigger challenge is getting the players themselves to believe that if they feel like maybe they're not quite ready, or they probably weren't expecting to play as soon as they were in a certain role. So I think you bang on. The confidence that the girls get themselves individually and internally is the most important thing, and we always try and celebrate that where we can. So just positive reinforcement on all the behaviours that we want, and it's really process driven. It's not outcome driven. There's going to be mistakes across the board, whether it's one of our leadership group members, whether it's a player playing their first game. So it's not living purely on the outcome. It's what's your intent, what's your purpose, what's your mindset, and if we celebrate that correctly as a coaching group, hopefully it's going to give the players that confidence that if they are called upon again later down the line in the season, they've already shown that they can execute at the highest level. So it's critical. It's critical, and of course, at times we wouldn't like to make as many changes as we have to, but there's always an opportunity, and our girls have been super this year in taking it.
For sure. Obviously, from an AFLW point of view, people talk about like the seasons, especially in all state leagues, but in particular here in Victoria, about the when the competitions are aligned. Like some say they want it closer, some are happy where it is. I had Brett Gawley, you mentioned from the North, Premiership coach, on recently when I asked him the same question. Would you like to see the competitions aligned further, or as a standalone club, are you happy with where it's at? What's your take on that? Because it seems to be another one that's always 50-50 split as well.
Yeah, it's a very complex one. Obviously, based on the fact, as you say, there's standalone clubs, then there's AFL affiliated clubs. So the synergy is not always going to be 100% across the competition for all sides. Look, I think it is a unique one. I'm pretty sure in time, clearly, and this is years down the track, we'd love to get the AFLW and the VFLW aligned from a season standpoint, as I'm sure the AFL and men's space want to do more so. But look, it's while we're still continuing to grow and develop. And while there is still the standalone component with the AFL affiliated clubs, I think it is probably very difficult to ask the AFL or the VFL from a state perspective to get everything in a really neat and easy way to digest, because it's probably just not viable. So look, with how it's done, we're still really happy in this competition and the way that it's set up. We're still definitely able to compete. It's not like there's an inherent disadvantage in a certain area. But yeah, in time, I'm sure things will just naturally start to fall into place in a more, as I said, neat and tidy way. But for now, I think, moving the season forward a month, pushing it from a March start to an April start this year, and also the AFLW season now beginning mid-August, they're kind of trying to bridge that gap already. So, again, whatever it is, we'll just make do.
Sure. You mentioned too about obviously last year having that alignment with Richmond. So what benefits do you feel like now, obviously outside of that, what kind of advantages could you now take out of that compared to some clubs that have that AFLW alignment in some capacity, and what kind of positives you can take from it? Obviously, having those players playing is great, but I feel like maybe from a downside, it's great for those players at any club that have that, but then also from the downside, the VFLW list of players are getting, I don't know what the right word would be, but like taken out of the side in place of those players while they're there. And that could also be sometimes part of people's decisions, I assume, in trying to go to certain clubs. And a club like Port Melbourne and Williamstown, in particular, they may be more inclined to go there knowing they're not going to have that issue of potentially AFLW players coming in at any given time and just potentially taking someone's spot.
Yeah, you're right. It's obviously the most, I guess, obvious barrier that presents with AFL players dropping in is what it does to your standalone VFL list and your girls in that capacity. Look, we obviously had a great alignment with Richmond, and we were able to obviously help both parties in getting their players exposure when needed, and also giving us some real experience to look up to and kind of use as the barometer or the model for some of our girls who, as I said, are aspiring to get to that level. But I think now having that clean air to be a pure standalone club, it just makes communication and dialogue from obviously my standpoint or the coaching group standpoint a hell of a lot easier. So there's pros and cons to each situation, but we're obviously very happy with where we're at, and it gives our girls a real clear understanding as to where they sit, and there's probably no, I guess, unexpected surprises that could pop up if the latter was still happening. So we're happy with it.
For sure. I've got a few more here, Thomas. I really do appreciate you coming and taking some time to come on. Obviously, the competition itself, the VFLW, away from the AFLW side of things and just the VFLW as a whole, do you feel like the coverage of the game itself in the VFLW side of things, do you feel like the coverage needs to kind of get better to get more out there? Like in terms of, that's why if you throw all these things together we've already talked about, do you feel like the coverage needs to be better? You're happy with how it's at? And if you would love to see it more expanded, how are some ways you feel like they could potentially do that to grow the game even more, like from a promotional point of view?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think just in general, I think women's footy, whether it's VFL or AFL, is obviously continuing to boom and get more eyes on it, just based on the talent coming through, right? So if you look at the coach league at the moment, the quality of the under-18 championships each year is just tremendous. It wouldn't shock me if we, as an industry in the women's space, if it rises a lot quicker than people are probably expecting. So I think that'll naturally come with time. Obviously, the stuff that you're doing here, Cooper, like it's fantastic in terms of trying to get more attention on players, coaches, just the industry as a whole. And any time it can be done, it's obviously beneficial. But look, I think obviously, the VFL men's space, we've now got the Saturday night games, so there's more focus on the VFL men's from a Channel 7 perspective that's broadcast free to air. If that in time can happen into a couple of VFLW games, clearly that would be great. But obviously there's a lot of loopholes and I guess boxes that need to be ticked for stuff like that to happen. But I think it's trending in the right direction. The more players that now kind of filter out of the AFLW system are continuing to play at the VFLW level. So you get more high profile names that are playing here, which will naturally draw more eyes to it. So I think the natural course it's on will continue to build on that, but clearly it's also always helpful to have some, more external eyes continuing to contribute to the conversation and put some news out there. So kudos to you, mate, for doing that, because it's really important.
I appreciate that. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, I've always gone to games as well, and I've always covered AFLW and AFL. And I've even, you mentioned about the coach talent, like I've obviously covered some of that online, like even the state championships in particular, obviously, because, that's where, you see the best of the best. And unfortunately, some of the players that don't that play in that league, unfortunately, can't have everyone drafted, unfortunately, through whether that's through Waffle W as well, so and Sample W, etc. Yeah, it's great to cover. I love doing it, and obviously something I'll continue to do. And it's also, you mentioned about recruiting earlier, about players that unfortunately don't get picked up. I remember doing my own power rankings for the AFLW last year, and there's like XYZ. It's like, I can't believe they didn't get in, which probably just shows, again, you're talking about the depth and the improvement that's coming. You see all these good players miss out, and you're like, wow, how did they not get picked up? And they reap the rewards of the club they go to, VFLW level or Waffle.
Yeah, exactly, and it just makes the competition all that more exciting, right? So, we, as I said, our girls thrive off the challenge of being able to play against players who they're aspiring to get to or have looked up to in the past. So, the more that can happen, the more it's obviously going to lead to extra development within the competition. Those players who do drop down might want to filter into coaching roles as well, so you're getting more experienced people in those positions. It's always just going to continue to benefit both the competition, but also players themselves once they get the ability to rub shoulders with those types of players.
For sure. And then two more. So in terms of the obviously injury replacement plays, obviously in the AFLW, that can happen at any given point now with how the rule is happening. And obviously it's great for the individuals that happen to get picked up from whatever club it ends up being. Going off some previous answers, I think I know where you may go with this, but are you happy with how that is in terms of like players being approached? Obviously, for the individual, it's great. For the sides that don't lose them, do you get to the point? Are you allowed to, by rules, recruit players from other clubs, like do like mini trades during the season? Because I swear there was another club recently with the Bulldogs and Box Hill where they had a player swap over across. How's that actually working? Is that actually a thing during the season?
Look, to be honest, we haven't had anything along those lines in season. Look, I'm sure if there's something that takes place between another club and a player and they decide to part ways, then they've got the opportunity to move to another club if they wish. But in terms of official, quote unquote trades or anything like that, nothing to my knowledge of that takes place. I think in general, though, there's obviously a lot of movement in the off season across clubs throughout the competition. Obviously a lot of connections, people that have worked at clubs either as staff members or as players, and a lot of people know a lot of people. So player movement's always great. Obviously there's a lot of talk about in the AFL men's space about introducing more more of a detailed trade season and what can be allowed to be done. Can you trade contract players and whatnot? And obviously in the VFLW we're at a different level, but I think in general player movement's always an exciting thing, and people love seeing the sometimes controversy in the intrigue in certain moves. So it's a good thing, but in terms of formal stuff, no, we haven't encountered anything like that.
No worries. Yes, in any competition, I love seeing trades. I don't know, even if it's a beneficial thing, something that a move you didn't want or you didn't want. I just love reading this, especially covering it. It's great to do. Now, the last one for you, Thomas, I really appreciate coming on. Now, in terms of the competition, when you go up again, or when the girls go up against a side and you're doing all your opera analysis, who's one of those players that you look and go, all right, how are we going to combat this player, and how are we going to go about it? Like, who's that one player that you dread to go, okay, we're going to try and combat her?
There's a few, or there definitely is a few each week. One I will say, though, because we've already played them once and we will have to play them again, would probably be Emily Eves from Williamstown, so our arch rival.
Oh, yes.
As you mentioned earlier. And she had a really good game against us in round 3-2, even though we tried to put a bit of a match-up onto her, but she's just a competitive beast around the contest. She generates and drives a lot of offensive power from Williamstown's mid-third or even their defensive third. She's just a very difficult player to contain, and she's so important to what they do. And we're definitely going to have to prepare again for her in about a month's time when we have to come up against them once more. On the weekend for another one, we came up against Stella Reid at North, who actually played with us a little bit last year when she was AFL listed at Richmond. So she had a handful of games for us in 24, and for North this year she's been incredible across halfback, and we probably at times thought she was still wearing the Port colours because we kicked it to her a fair bit. So she's someone that we'll also have to watch out for when we play them again in 6 weeks' time.
For sure. I remember talking to Brett not that long ago Bammy with 4 weeks ago. He was talking about how rapt they were to bring her in, and as you mentioned, how good she was, and definitely one player to watch out for. And probably wouldn't be shocking if she's on a list again, even before this season's even finished. Again, if there's the cards all aligned. Thomas, I really appreciate you coming on. Good luck for the rest of the season. Hopefully, the side can make finals again and make a big impact come the end of the season. So, appreciate you coming on.
No worries, Cooper. Thanks, mate.
No, thank you.